Welcome to this episode of Sunny's Silver Linings. Sunny's guest today is Arlin Sorensen, Vice President of Ecosystem Evangelism at ConnectWise. With over 35 years of experience in the IT world, Arlin knows better than anyone the value of creating a profitable organization and talks with Sunny about truly knowing your company's end goal and destination. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kela. Over to you, Sunny.
Arlin, thank you so much for joining me today on my podcast.
It is so good to be with you, Sunny. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And I'm so grateful for the impact that you have made on my life personally, because I know how I changed as a leader when I joined HTG. And that was many, many years ago. And I still remember meeting you at your farm during that Jumpstart program, onboarding program. And then we had a dinner at your farm. And that was probably the first time after moving out of India. I'm a farm boy as well, born at a farm in India and before moving here. So used to be very helpful, useful to my grandfather. A lot of manual agriculture back in the days. You're talking about 90, 91, 92 in India. And a lot of manual work, but I used to be helping my grandfather. And I it was so exciting for me to work at the farm. It gave me so much joy just helping at the farm. And when I came here and visited your farm, that was the first time I have seen a farm in America where I was there and just experiencing the entire how stuff works. And it was kind of a lot different, but the most beautiful piece there is that journey that I started with HTG. And as a result of being a part of that community, a wonderful, wonderful community, it impacted me, my life in a very, very positive way. And I built so many great relationships with you, to other members in my peer group. And thank you so much for creating that wonderful community.
Well, you're welcome. And, it is all about the people. That's the thing that we all learn about leadership and everything else we do. It comes down to the people, and HTG and Evolve are full of really good ones.
Yeah. And so I'm super interested in your journey, Arlin, that you were a simple farm boy like I was. And then you traveled to this technology world as a technology entrepreneur, as a MSP, that you have built a very successful MSP there. And then you moved into more of community building, HTG institution that you have built to ConnectWise with IT Nation. And now you are doing a lot of thought leadership, the legacy work that you're doing. So you have already, as a serial entrepreneur, created that legacy, and you are kind of expanding your impact to a very, very different level with stuff that you're doing right now. So can you share your journey from farm to legacy?
Absolutely. And I would start by saying I'm still a simple Iowa farm boy. At the end of the day, I've got dirt in my veins. And, if I look out my window here, there's a soybean crop right outside. But, I graduated from Iowa State University back in 1977, farm operations degree. I had every intention and did come home to farm with my dad and soon after my brother. And we were going along, and in 1982, this thing called an Apple II Plus computer started to get my attention. So I bought one, convinced my wife that I could use it for farm accounting. So that was my excuse to go buy a computer that I didn't really need, but it was cool, and I wanted one. And I fell in love with technology. I began to experiment with all kinds of things that you could do with it. And, soon I was helping neighbors go to the city. We had to drive into Omaha, about 50 miles away, to buy a system. But I'd take 2 or 3 of them down with me. We'd buy a few computers, bring them back. I'd help them set them up and teach them how to use it. And it was in 1985 that I decided, maybe I should start a little hobby business here to separate the accounting out of my personal stuff and keep track of what's going on. And so I did that. And for the next 5 years, it was just myself and my bride, Nancy, answering the phone. And I'd sell a few ag accounting systems and get things going. It started to take off a little bit. So in 1990, my brother and I decided to create a company and incorporate and really begin to run a business. And, that grew very slowly over the next 5 years. I got all the way to 5 employees by 1995. So it took me 10 years to get to 5 people. But in 95, Windows 95 came out and our growth began to take off. And so that year we went from 5 people to 13 people. And I started adding additions onto my house. We had made the decision to grow the company here, not knowing what was going to happen really. But over the course of the next years, we added on to our home 5 times and have got 12,000 square feet of office space attached to the end of my house. Not necessarily a great plan for what we're going to do with it in the future, but it has worked well for our journey. And, we grew the company and continued to move forward. One of my biggest lessons that happened, Sonny, happened in 1999. I drank the Y2K Kool-Aid completely. And I went from 25 people to 36 people that year. Wow. Because I believed that the greatest opportunity of a generation was going to happen in 2000. And it missed Iowa completely. So that's where HTG came about. In April of 2000, at our company leadership team meeting, we were trying to figure out what we were doing wrong because we just didn't have any Y2K business to speak of. And we had all these techs sitting on the bench with nothing to do. We were bleeding money like crazy. And actually, one of my teammates said, maybe we should just talk to some other partners and find out what's going on. And so we reached out to 3 other companies across Iowa and got together and, we compared notes and found out they didn't have any Y2K work either. So, that really gave us the info we needed to realize we had to downsize because we just had way too much help for the work that we had to do. And that was a painful experience, but one that would have taken me a lot longer to do had I not had that perspective from others. And that group continued to meet together. And over the course of the next 4 years, we grew to 12 members. That was really all I ever intended to have happen was one group of, locally based partners across the Midwest here. People found out about it through conversation and other ways, and they'd call and ask to get into the peer group. And I had to say, no, we're full. That's all we can really deal with. So I began to take a wait list. And when we got into 2006, I had 30-some people on a waiting list. So we added a second and a third group, and then it just took off and exploded from there. So over the course of, the next 13 years or so, we grew to the place where we had, 50 groups or so across multiple different kinds of interactions. And we had been closely aligned with ConnectWise. Arnie and his leadership team had been extremely supportive. They had walked with us and helped us to achieve, a lot of what we had achieved. And we had talked about coming together, starting back in 2016. But there was just so much going on both sides that we kind of pushed the can down the road until 2018. And, at that point, we were all ready to really bring things together. And January 1st of 2018, ConnectWise acquired HTG, and that allowed us to really kick things into a whole nother gear. And so since then, we've grown to over 600 companies that we're working with globally. And have really seen our program expand. And, that's freed me up. I'm no longer in the day-to-day side of operating the peer groups, but I'm able to spend time focused on thought leadership and really legacy and helping people achieve the success they want and, provide information and guidance that can help the community grow further and faster. And so it's been a really fun ride, and we've had a lot of positive impact on people's lives. And, I'm just excited to be able to continue that journey and do things like work with you on this podcast and with Build It that's coming up and other ways to just infuse the community with things that we've learned over the years.
Thank you. And thank you for that impact. And I'm super excited to have you here at Build It. It's just 2 weeks away now. Very excited to see you here and provide that New York hospitality. And
it won't be like the farm, though, right? It won't be like the farm.
Yes. It's going to be farm type of hospitality in New York City. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, Arlin. And do you still have that first computer? Because when I visited farm, I did see that. I saw a couple of very old computers. So the first computer that you purchased to do accounting for your farm, is that still there?
It is still here. I actually have a little museum of equipment that I've collected over the years. So, yep, it's still here and it's on display.
Okay, awesome. So I know you have done so much work in the area of mindset and understanding, you experiencing as an entrepreneur, as an owner, the importance of mindset, and then working with so many talented entrepreneurs as part of HTG community through peer groups. And I think you have one or two peer groups that you have been leading. I don't know it right now, but it used to be probably bigger MSPs or leaders where they had that higher growth targets. And so you have lived in this space from many, many years and have learned so much and have done a lot of work in the area of mindset. So can you talk to us, what is an owner mindset?
Yeah, mindset's not a new term or a new thing for sure. But what we've learned and really come to realize lately is just the impact of that mindset, Sonny. Yeah. The owner mindset is how they look at the world, how they, ultimately lead their company. And while it's always been important, as we've seen a lot of people come toward the end of their career and exit the business, yeah, we've realized just how important that mindset is in terms of being able to drive them to success. And so, we've worked, Scott Scroggin and myself, over the last 18 months to really put together some thoughts about mindset. We call them modes. And we've identified 4 key areas that we find most owners tend to fall into. Most, it's not necessarily pure in these 4 things, but they kind of generically describe what people think. And the first one is a startup, and everybody starts there, right? We all start our companies in one way or another. That startup looks different, but in that mode, you are really just scrapping to try to keep things going, and you don't necessarily have plans or people or processes, but you carry the weight of the company on your back, and you just make it happen. Yeah. And a lot of people get stuck there. If you look at the data in the U.S., over 90% of companies never grow beyond 10 employees or $1 million in revenue. And, just a lot of folks get stuck in startup because they don't know how to move on to the next level. Then there are 3 other kind of swim lanes that we find. One we call the balance builder. that's a mindset where the owner really runs the company to support the lifestyle they want to have. They're not driven to necessarily create a big growth company. They're not driven to work constantly. They want some to manage that tension between work and life and make sure they don't miss important things in their family and those kind of things. And then there's the value builder. The value builder is the owner mindset that's playing the long game. They want to create value over time. It's kind of a slow, steady, up and to the right, approach. And, they do that by creating leadership teams and bringing people around themselves, putting processes in place. And their goal is that when they're ready to exit their company, they've created enough value to, support the lifestyle they want to live post work.
Yeah.
And then there's the empire builder. That's the fourth mode that we find. The empire builder is one that wants to go fast. They want to go high, and they're trying to make it happen in a very short timeline. And so, they're willing to make sacrifices in the short term to get a long-term reward. And those are the companies that are trying to have a hockey stick kind of growth. We're seeing a lot of that today with private equity funding behind it to enable, a lot of acquisitions and other things to make that happen. So we find these four mindsets really kind of describe how companies are led and run. And all of them are perfectly great mindsets to have. Where we find a disconnect is when people want to declare a mindset, let's say as a value builder, which means they're playing a long game, but they run the company like a balance builder. Mm-hmm. So they take all the money out of the company as they go. They haven't created value in the company. They've got a business that supports their lifestyle and takes care of their employees, but they get to the end of their career and they haven't got a pot of gold there that they needed to retire with. And that's the discussion we want to have with the community today is pick your lane and then live that way, act that way, so you don't get disappointed down the road. I got to tell you that the most frustrating calls I get come from people that have bbeen working for 20, 25, 30 years in their IT company. And they call me up and say, I'm trying to sell my company. I can't really get anybody to want to pay much for it. What am I doing wrong? And the reality is they haven't built value in their organization. And they thought that by working hard every day for 20 plus years, somebody would write them a big check. Yeah. And as you know, people don't buy hard work. They buy value. They buy a company that will create profit. And if you didn't run your company that way, you're not going to get that result. So the way a balance builder has to achieve success is they have to take money out every year as they go because they're making money. Instead of spending it, they need to save some of it, and they can get to the end of their career and have plenty of money set aside. But if they don't get that mindset adjusted to how they're going to actually run their life and their business, they get disappointed. And that's a heartbreaking thing from my perspective.
Okay, so one thing that I'm curious about is that why is that disconnect? So is it a matter of someone being inspired of having one mindset? It could be balance builder. It could be empire builder. Their inspiration is to build a company based on either empire building mindset or the balance builder mindset, but their practice is different. So why is that difference? Why those two pieces are not calibrated?
Well, I think that's a really great question. And the reality is that, a lot of times they haven't really stopped to think about how their actions are not aligned with the mindset they have. And, The interesting thing that we found, we just rolled this out to the Evolve members at our meeting a couple weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And we did an assessment of over 250 companies. And what we found was that even within a organization where you have multiple partners, one partner saw things one way, the other partner saw them a different way. And in a lot of cases, we had a balance builder and a value builder mindset in the same company. And so what we're learning is that people just haven't stopped to think about, this is what I want to accomplish, and this is how I'm acting. And there's a disconnect there because they haven't taken the time to think through it. The most important question, Sonny, is to figure out what you're trying to accomplish. What's your destination? What do you want to build? And you've worked with a lot of partners, and you know that a lot of them don't have an answer to that question, right? They just get up, they started a company a long time ago, and they just work hard trying to serve customers, but they haven't thought about what they're trying to build. And until you answer that question, you can't really figure out how you ought to act.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you got to be very clear in terms of what you want, right? And then you go from there. And I do see that overall, a lot of partners that we work with, they are they're not very clear in terms of that meaning in work or purpose, right? But people or partners where they're very clear in terms of, the purpose that they have, or, profit with purpose, progress with purpose. Those people have a lot more kind of, they kind of really are satisfied. They're a lot more grateful at being entrepreneurs. And they are a lot more satisfied with their journey because the freedoms that they wanted to create as entrepreneurs, they know what they want, what freedoms they want, and what they need to do for those freedoms, right? So can we take a minute, Arlin, to define these four mindset, a little bit more clarity on definition of these four mindsets?
Sure. The startup mode is again where everybody begins. And, typically in the startup mode, you're just trying to keep the business functional and grow and move forward. And, what typically will happen is that an entrepreneur will go find somebody that thinks a lot like him and is a lot like him in terms of how they do things. And they may surround themselves with 3 or 4 or 5 people, typically very much like themselves, and they just work hard to serve customers. They don't typically have a sales mindset. They're not really focused on building process. They just work hard and carry the company. And that can last. That can last forever. A lot of companies get stuck there because they don't learn how to be leaders. They don't put process in place. A lot of times they're not profitable because they don't understand financials and how to truly structure, their costs and those things. And so, it's an exciting place to be because you're doing something new, but it's a very frustrating place to get stuck because you really never get out of the chaos in the startup mindset. The balance builder mindset is one where that owner will build out a more structured team to cover all the bases, but they're not driven to grow. That's not their number one thing. What they want to do is find a happy medium between working and being involved in their family and their community. They want to balance that. They want to have time for their hobbies and things that they enjoy doing. They want to play golf. They don't want to work all the time. Mm-hmm. And so, they find that balance between what works for their work life and what works in their personal life. And they manage that tension very, very well between the two. Mm-hmm. A lot of balance builders are extremely profitable. They've managed to get the right set of customers with the right set of employees, get their cost structure in line. They're very profitable. And the challenge that can happen is they tend to spend all that money in enjoying life, which is certainly what an entrepreneur runs their own business for, right? So that they can have some real value come out of that. But they don't think about the fact that 20 years down the road, nobody really is going to want to pay a lot for their company because a lot of it's related to how they relate to their customer base. They often have got individual relationships with all their key customers. And, they typically haven't got a sales engine other than entrepreneurial, principle-led selling. But they run a very stable and successful company. And if they harvest that profit every year and put some of it away, they can get to the end of a career and have a really good outcome. Some of the happiest and actually most successful guys I know are balance builders. They found out how to kind of put it all together. The value builder, they play the long game. So they're thinking about, what do I need to do to get to a point where down the road, when I'm ready to exit my business, I'm going to have enough money to support my lifestyle. And they're thinking about how to grow a company. So they want to build a sales engine. They want to look at M&A. They want to do all these things that will continue to help them grow and be successful. They're out looking for new customers to bring on, new employees to add to their team. They're not trying to do it fast. They know they've got a lot of runway, but that's the approach they take. They're putting process in place. They're putting the systems in place. They're making investments to support growth over time. And then the empire builder is typically one that it's go big or go home. It's we want to grow this quickly. In the market today, these are called platform companies. Almost always they have some kind of external funding to help fuel that growth. And they're looking to hire, high-level people as part of their team, very professionally led. They've typically got a board of directors they report to that is going to help steer the ship. And they're really all about looking for ways to fuel growth, both organically and through M&A. Most of these companies want to do both. And, they're the companies that are doing a lot of acquisitions in the market today and really driving significant changes. All four of these modes are valid and important in the channel. They all have a different mindset, but they need to have a different set of actions that go with them if they're going to be successful. The one variable that's really important for partners not to lose sight of is timelines. Because I get a lot of calls from people that are in their 50s, early 60s. I'm thinking about maybe selling my company. What can I do to get it ready to sell next week? Yeah, you can't change things that quickly. You need some time to adjust how you prepare your company if you're going to transition out. And so timeline is so important in this mindset thing. And you just got to plan ahead. That's really the message I think about all these modes. They all work if you plan, and if you execute according to that.
Yeah. No, so having clarity, it's a personal choice where you want to be, and having that clarity on, wanting what you want and knowing that, and then having that purpose clear, right, and connection with the purpose and what you really want out of this, right? And so as part of your work, Arlin, your research, your work, do you have some understanding where majority of the MSPs are, X percentage are either value builders or empire builders or startups?
Well, we have some early data on the Evolve community. So that's the best data I could give you. Other than the U.S. small business community overall, over 90%, in my opinion, are in startup mode. But across Evolve, the majority of the members of Evolve fall in the value builder mode. We have a good chunk there. We have next would be the balance builders, and then there's a small percentage that are empire builders or startups. But I think, as I recall, it was close to 2/3 were in the value builder mode. I don't think that's probably representative of the community at large. But Evolve members have been ingrained with planning and figuring out what they want to do and all that over time. So I think they're a little bit probably skewed toward value compared to the community at large.
Yeah. So I think that's in alignment with overall what our partner base is and what we see in the market. A couple of observations that are probably aligned with what you're sharing. One is that MSPs that are associated with a peer group or, they believe in that advisory board, peer-to-peer advisory board, or kind of really collaborating with others in a peer group format, they are a little bit more mature that we see, that they are probably more connected with a value builder mindset. And people where they are very tech-centric and they just want, they're not part of the peer groups. They are just kind of running around doing everything. And that's how the majority of the businesses are under 10 employee companies. And those are probably in that startup mode. And the owner is doing a lot of technical work as well, project work. So that is in alignment with what I see. So now my next question, Arlin, is that how does that mindset impact the way companies should operate?
Well, it's important. If you know what your destination is, then you can work backward to create a plan to get there, right? And that's really the key, Sonny, is, understand your destination, then you map out the plan to help you get there. And so, for example, as a balance builder, it comes down to creating profit, but saving that profit as you go. That's really the key action that has to happen, is you have to save it on the way through, because it's not going to have a giant value at the end. And if you do that, you can have much success. But if that mindset doesn't align to the action you take, that's where I get these frantic calls. I mean, I had a call a few weeks ago from a partner who we had the conversation, and he understood what I was saying about the fact that his P&L just wasn't going to support a giant check from somebody, because he hadn't been running the company to build value. He had been using the money to support his habit or his hobbies and his lifestyle, right? I mean, he had a plane, he had a boat, he had all the things that a entrepreneur might want, but he didn't have a pot of gold as he was getting ready to sell his company, because he had spent the money along the way. I'll never forget the question he asked me. Would you be willing to get on the phone with my wife and explain to her why we have this problem? And I said, I'm happy to help you. I'm not going to do that one. But it's true. It happens because we don't think about a plan. And that's what I hope can come out of some of the things that we're talking about here, is that people realize planning matters. And you got to know that destination and how you want to get there, or you're going to end up there at some point in the future and have disappointment. And it's one thing for an entrepreneur to be disappointed. It's a whole nother thing when your spouse is disappointed because you've been promising lots of things you can't deliver.
Yeah, that is going to be so more of expectations, right, for the family for people around you at work as well. So that is so critical. That's so important, especially for the life plan that you personally, we have gone through that, those 4 pillars of life and life plan. So if you want to impact those 4 pillars, which is basically, you being healthy, your family being healthy, your business being healthy, or your career being healthy, and then your legacy being healthy. And if we are not, it's a lot of responsibility as leaders, as owners, and a lot of people depend on our decisions. So being clear in terms of your thinking and in terms of where you are, where you're going, and then aligning your actions, and then based on those actions and that journey, that vision, explaining it to people around you so that they expect right things from you, that you don't end up disappointing them. So,
just a comment on that, Sonny, because this came up in a lot of our discussions at Evolve about the modes a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
and it was the disconnect between the way an owner said their mindset was and what their service managers or service executives saw in terms of their behavior.
Yeah.
And, that those kind of disconnects between employees or between partners really cause confusion. One of the guys shared that, his owner says they're a value builder, but when he goes to them and wants to hire the next service guy, he's told he can't. But in the same week, he sees his owner spend a lot of money on a second, property, or, buying another car or whatever. And it's that misalignment that really creates some challenges for companies that, we just need people to get on the same page so that they can be aligned and really work well together.
Yeah. You pick your swim lane. Right? It's a personal choice. You have the complete freedom to pick any one of these 4 swim lanes, but then be there and stay laser focused in that swim lane. Don't try to jump few minutes here and few minutes in the other swim lane, because you're just not very clear in terms of which swim lane you want to be in. And one example that I want to share, Arlin, is that, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a partner. And this is more just having conversation in terms of how they are running their business in terms of their operational maturity, where it is today, that self-assessment of the company, that what pieces are managed well and what pieces are still kind of going through that startup phase. But overall, what that owner's understanding in terms of where the company is versus the reality was very different, because it was more like, who does the sales? Okay, I have to go to the sales appointment. Who does the overall project work? I end up going somewhere. And when I asked him in the business, in the beginning, and he's like, I'm running the business. And I'm like, it seems like from the overall your activity inventory list that it's not you running the business is running you, and you are in that that mode, which is still probably the startup mindset that you described. I think I was thinking along startup mode mindset, but overall his overall understanding is that he's probably in a very value building kind of mindset there. And can you relate this or apply this to your customers?
Absolutely. This applies to all businesses. And, I think that's where the magic of this can be, is when we really understand our customers and their mindsets, it helps us define how we ought to interact with them. The thing about a balance builder is they're not growth driven. They're not the kind of customer that's going to want to buy something from you every week, because they're not trying to grow the company in a rapid way. Yeah. If you're dealing with an empire builder, you need to have strategic discussions with them on a very regular basis, because they want to go fast, they want to go big, and you need to be in sync with that. Or you get surprised and find out that, they've been acquired by somebody else, or some major change has happened and you're completely out of the loop because you don't have that relationship. So I think this applies definitely to our customers. It can help guide how we have a relationship with them, how we serve them better. And certainly, I think it's got a lot of potential to help us really succeed.
Yeah. So if I'm an MSP owner, how do I go about finding about my customer's mindset, right? Are there any signs that you can see? There are any questions that you can ask to just really understand that, okay, this company has this mindset, or this company owner has this mindset, so I have to have this approach for this customer?
We have three key questions that we think are important to ask, Sonny, that we need to ask ourselves as business owners, but I think relate well with our customers to kind of help us get some understanding. The first one is, what's your destination? What are you trying to build? What is that mission or purpose that you're on? And I ran an MSP for 27 years. I can tell you I didn't have that kind of conversations all that often with my customers. I wish I would have, because it would have helped me understand what they were trying to do. The second one is, how do you want to get there? What's the journey look like? What's that, vision and core values path look like for that business? We need to understand kind of their mindset of how they want to accomplish that big purpose or destination. And then we need to talk about the timeline. How fast do you want to get there? What timeline are you working against? That gives us a lot of clarity as to the kinds of things we should offer people. When I'm talking with MSPs and they tell me that I'm on a 2-year timeline before I think I'm going to exit my company, I'm very unlikely going to suggest that they would start to try to build a sales engine with a 2-year window. Because the odds are, by the time they would get a return out of that sales engine, they will have cost themselves, EBITDA dollars, making an investment they probably wouldn't get a return on. And so my advice would be not to spend that money right now in light of the timeline they have. So I think those three questions can help us a lot in beginning to figure out what swim lane people are in. And you can learn a lot by just observing and interacting with people. We have a chart that I'm willing, very willing to share with you, that you can share with your listeners, that kind of gives some general idea of the kinds of behaviors we see in these different swim lanes. And so, you can figure it out pretty well. The problem is what you see from action may not align with what they think their mindset is. And that's where the disconnect can be a problem. But, as a trusted advisor, what better thing to be able to do than to sit down and have a conversation about what it is they want to accomplish and then how they're going to get there and try to help get them in line.
Yeah, and that's great value to them, or you can add value to them by asking them some questions that can help them think about their thinking and their mindset and help them get calibrated with that, right? And do you think the VTO has, so kind of really, a lot of people are using EOS and they have the VTO in terms of their 1-year picture, 3-year picture, their goals. So maybe you can get probably some kind of understanding from there, as well as their trusted advisor, if they are using something like that, right? Is that one piece of data point that you can reference?
Absolutely. That gives you a lot of insight into what they're thinking and, their approach. You can see what they believe from a growth perspective is going to happen. And yeah, it's a great tool to help kind of narrow things down and dial in on what their approach is going to be.
Yeah. Okay. And Arlin, thank you so much. I want to continue talking, and I know we have some time limitation here. And Very, very valuable insights. Thank you so much. So much wisdom, so much experience, and especially for our MSP ecosystem, you add so much value to this channel. And what I'm taking, a lot of takeaways, but key takeaway for me is that I got to know, first of all, what I want from my business and the timeline associated with that business, and then think about my thinking in terms of which swim lane I want to be in, and have my mind and heart sync that this is exactly the swim lane that is the right swim lane for me, and then staying laser focused and not, in your words, tangents or the shiny objects that you see in other swim lanes, staying away from those shiny objects and staying in your swim lane. And knowing if you are in the startup mindset or balance builder or value builder or empire builder, knowing which mindset is the right mindset for you, and then having the right plan to make sure that you have clarity, and then you can communicate that clarity to your teams so that they know where we are and where we are going and why we are going there and what is important to us in terms of mindset, so they can be your support structures, really be there for you, and team members can work effectively to achieve those objectives. So thank you so much for coming to my podcast. I truly, truly appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Sonny. I certainly enjoy the conversation always with you. I'm looking forward to being with you in Jersey at Build It soon, and we'll continue our conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so excited about taking your second trip to Statue of Liberty there. And we will see the freedom symbol together.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Arlin. And
thanks, Sonny.
Thank you.